In 5.6 day 2, we're going to use this thing called the discriminant to determine the number of real roots. The discriminant is that portion that is underneath the square root. Just the b squared minus 4ac. And if you recall, when we did our quadratic formula, in the first case, we had real roots. We had numbers that were nice numbers as far as under the square root wasn't negative. So when we just look at that portion, the b squared minus 4ac, we can determine if we're going to have two real solutions, one real solution, or complex solutions. So think about if that b squared minus 4ac was greater than 0, some number like 5 or 25 or 37. The square root of that would give us two numbers. So when we have b squared minus 4ac greater than 0, we have two real solutions, as in it will cross over the x-axis in two places. When it's equal to 0, we're not going to have a square root of anything, so we're only going to have the first portion, which is the opposite of b over 2a. So when it equals 0, you're only going to have one real solution. And as we recall in our second examples in the last lesson, we had imaginary numbers or complex solutions, and the b squared minus 4ac in those cases was negative or less than 0. So when it's less than 0, we're going to have two complex solutions, or two solutions that are going to involve I. So if we're going to analyze our equations by using a discriminant, we still need it to be in standard form. Excuse me. Standard form. And then we're only going to look at b squared minus 4ac. So my a is 1, my b is negative 6, my c is 7. So I do negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 7. So that's 36 minus 28, which is 8 greater than 0. So that's two real solutions. Second one, again, standard form. A is 1, B is negative 6, C is 9. So it's B squared minus 4 times A times C. And we get 0, which is equal to 0, so that means I'm going to have one real solution. In this case, A is 1, B is negative 6, C is 11. So B squared minus 4 times A times C and negative 8 is less than 0, so you're going to have two non-real or complex solutions. So you go ahead and do these three. Again, remember the first thing you need to do is make sure it's in standard form. So I'll do that for all of them real quick. Then find your A, B, and C, and then it's B squared minus 4AC. Okay? And hopefully you were able to get those. How do you find the value of the discriminant? Again, it's B squared minus 4AC. Under what conditions does a quadratic equation have two distinct real solutions? One distinct real solution or two distinct non-real complex? So when B squared is greater than 0, two real solutions. When it equals 0, one real solution. And when it's less than 0, we have two non-real or complex. Okay, now we're going to use an application for this. We have this function modeled by y equals negative 16t squared minus 2t plus 500. The horizontal distance x in feet between the water and its point of release is modeled by x equals 91t. At what horizontal distance from the fire should this pilot start releasing water? So the first thing you need to do is find the values of t. And then after we find the values of t, we're going to substitute that back in to the x equals equation. So how do I solve for t? Well, set it equal to 0. And then use our quadratic formula. Again, it's the opposite of b, plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So we have 2 plus or minus 4 plus and we're going to get 2 plus or minus 1, approximately 179, negative 32. So our two answers 2 plus 179 over negative 32, which in end result is going to give me a negative number, so that's not going to work. And then 2 minus 179 over negative 32 is approximately 5.5. So once I find that, I substitute that into my x equals 91t. And you get 500.5. So we're going to do the same thing here. You're going to use the function find the value of t, and it's using the same x equals so a is negative 16, b is negative 2, c is 400. So we have the opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4 ac all over 2a. Multiply those numbers out, make sure that you can get them. And we already know that it's approximately 160. The negative answer isn't going to work. So the 2 plus 160 cannot work because that gives us a negative number. So this is 2 minus 160. And that answer is approximately 4.9. So x equals 91 times 4.9, which is 449. How do we know which value to substitute in for y? Because we're talking about height, so we want to always set it equal to 0. Once you solve the quadratic equation for t, how do you know which value t to use? And time cannot be negative. Closing the lesson, use the quadratic formula. So let's do that real quick. A equals 1. Opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this is negative 7 plus or minus square root of 1, which is 1. So you get 7 plus 1 over 2 and 7 minus 1 over 2. Oh, negative 7. Whoops. My bad. Let's see if I can fix those. Apologize. Let's try this. Okay, and the assignment is on Schoology.